Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. I'm Sebastian and today I'm bringing you an article that is absolutely full of deception, full of double standards, and in my opinion it's pretty much everything that's wrong with our news these days and our politicians as well. The lesson here is it's okay when we do it. It's never okay when you do it. Anyway, let's just jump into the article and we're gonna comment on the sides a little bit of armchair quarterback, if you will. So let's dive into it. So this is an article from Reuters, and it starts like this. Chisinau, May 29th, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken flies to Moldovan capital, it's actually Moldavian capital, Chisinau on Wednesday, the first stop on a brief Europe tour aimed at solidifying Western support for Ukraine across NATO allies and neighboring countries. So today, guys, yesterday we had a look at Zelensky's tour in Europe. It was labeled as a whistle-stop tour. Again, the language. These guys are superstars, right? These guys are superstars, famous singers. The top US diplomat trip comes as Ukraine is trying to fend off intensifying Russian attacks in the east, and President Vladimir Putin warns that allowing Kiev to use Western weapons to strike inside Russia could trigger a global conflict. You think? In Chisinau, Blinken will meet pro-European president, I'm going to come back to this one, Maya Sandu, and other senior officials at a time when US officials say the ex-Soviet Republic of 2.5 million, which has a long border with Ukraine, faces Russian influence operations. Right, so first thing I want to point out is pro-European president. That president, in the form of Maya Sandu, shouldn't be pro-European or pro-Russian or pro-anything else but pro-Moldova. She's the president of Moldova. And as the president of Moldova, she should look at what's the best for her people, for the people living in Moldova. She shouldn't really care about European values, about Russian values, about propaganda from this side, propaganda from the other side. She should be in charge of the Moldavian people. I'm from Eastern Europe, very, very close to Moldova. I know their history quite well. And I can tell you that out of 2.5 million people in Moldova, about 400 to 500,000 are Russian-speaking. So there's a big, big portion of Russian-speaking population in Moldova. In my life, I've met a lot of Moldavians. None of the ones I've met had any sort of animosity towards Russia or Europe. In fact, I'm actually astonished they're extremely balanced as people. I admire them for that, actually. They don't really take sides. They take the best from the Russian side, and then they take the best from the European side. They're not fanboys of anybody. Anyway, let's carry on. Jim O'Brien, the top US diplomat for Europe at the State Department, told reporters on Friday that the United States would likely announce a robust package of support for Moldova's energy independence without elaborating. Well, there's nothing to elaborate. It pretty much says it all. We want to give Moldova all of the incentives to basically break out of Russia's sphere of influence. That's really what it boils down to. Under Sandu, Moldova has staunchly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine and set its sights on joining the European Union. Of course. It has sharply reduced its dependence on Russian natural gas and is diversifying its sources of electricity supply. Well, that's all well and good. You know, that is absolutely all well and good. Diversifying the energy supply is always a good thing. But the message here is that we, the West, are trying to break Moldova out of Russia's sphere of influence. And this is exactly what we've done to many other countries, including to my own country, then to Ukraine, and now to Moldova. Let's not forget about Georgia. Anyone remember Georgia? Moldova, which holds a referendum in October to cement its bid to join the EU in its constitution, is a vocal supporter of Ukraine and sees its security as closely tied to Kiev's ability to hold back the Russian forces. I don't see how this is related. Ukraine and Russia have a conflict for very specific reasons, which we're going to get to in another video. Moldova has nothing to do with that. Russia doesn't hate Moldova. Russia doesn't want to attack Moldova. Right. Support for Ukraine equals support for Moldova. Again, he's just trying to tie everything together. But it also works the other way around. Supporting Moldova strengthens Ukraine because Ukraine needs a strong democratic Moldova and a supportive neighbor because we share a 1,200 kilometer border, said Olga Roshka, the Moldovan president's foreign policy advisor. You really have to do some mental gymnastics in order to understand how they're trying to tie all of these things and clump them together so it fits the narrative. She told Reuters Blinken's visit was a very strong sign of support, but also for the choices the Moldovans have been making in terms of democratic path and their EU aspirations. EU aspirations. I mean, I'm in Europe. I don't see how my life has improved since the European Union. I really don't. But Moldovans are free to try it out. We do not anticipate that there will be an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO, but we think there will be a substantial show of support for Ukraine as it works to win its war. To win its war. Well, if there was ever a bad time for the Ukrainian armed forces, and I say this very sadly, this is probably the worst time. They're being pushed in the north. They're being pushed very hard in the east. The Russians have more and more forces. They're recruiting, I think, 15, 20,000 each month. Ukraine is struggling to recruit people. They've had to resort to grabbing people off the street. But the language here is that as Ukraine works to win its war. I swear, some people are so disconnected from reality, or they try to appear that way, but it works because the majority of people, they don't follow these things closely. They just read an article every now and then, and they think, well, yeah, that's how it is. It is very far in reality from what you read here. This will include ongoing NATO support in building Ukraine's future force and efforts to help Ukraine as it makes the reforms needed so that it's able to join the EU and run across the bridge to NATO as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. That's the problem right there. When will it be possible? We haven't defined that. We keep saying to Ukraine, oh, just a little bit more, just push a little bit more, just a little bit longer. Eventually, we'll allow you in. When? Everybody who's following this NATO topic closely knows that there's a clause in there. You cannot join NATO if you have a conflict, a border conflict with any other nation. You're simply not going to be allowed in. So what are we trying to do here? Zelensky knows that. We know that. I think this is just for local consumption, for the average Ukrainian, to try to sell them. More than 2 years into the deadliest war in Europe since World War II, Western allies are debating how to stop Russian military advances. I thought Ukraine is willing to win its war. But now here you're saying Russian military is advancing. And Putin is increasingly evoking the risk of a global war. No. If you actually watch Putin, as opposed to just reading about Putin, if you actually watch him, he never escalated anything. He just warned us. If you do this, then it's a red line for me. It's as simple as that. That doesn't mean he's evoking anything. He's just telling you what he does, and he usually does what he says. One critical issue has been whether the allies would allow Ukraine to use its weapons they provide to strike inside Russia, a topic that might be discussed at the Prague meeting. I think that meeting is in July, by the way. Yeah, this goes back to what we discussed yesterday in the previous article about, well, do we allow Ukraine to use their weapons to hit inside Russia? I don't think it will make a difference to Ukraine, but I think it will make a massive difference to us. Sure, if the Ukraine uses their long-range weapons, say, for example, the ATACMS missiles, which are long-range, sure, they can strike inside of Russia, but they've already done it. They've already struck Belgorod multiple times, and that's inside Russia. What will happen? Sure, they're going to blow up some buildings, they're going to kill some people, but the outcome, the overall outcome of the war, that won't change one bit. I don't think that will change at all. Right, let's move on to the last piece. In comments to The Economist, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg urged alliance members to allow Ukraine to use their weapons inside Russia, a view supported by some European members of the Transatlantic Alliance, but not the United States. Okay, pretty much the same thing. Guys, before we wrap the video up, I just wanna say something. Ever since the Cold War, even during the Cold War, but more specifically after the Cold War, once the Soviet Union broke apart, What we've been trying to do is to divide. First, we attack Russia's sphere of influence. Pretty much, we supported the Chechens in the Chechnya war. Then we moved on to all of the other countries in Asia. Then we took Kazakhstan. We're trying to take everyone else on our side, basically everyone from the Russian sphere of influence, that is. Then we had Georgia. Then we had Ukraine. It's okay when we do it, right? Because we're the good people. We are good. We don't need to justify our actions. We do it from a place of goodness. Imagine, right? Just imagine this scenario. Let's say the Russians, the Chinese, the people we don't like, say the North Koreans, the Iranians, if they would rock around South America, I don't know, to anybody, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, everybody, and just say, right, you know what, guys, forget the US, why don't you come with us? It's going to be so much better. We are the good people. Here, actually, we're going to give you some more money than the US gives you. How would we respond to that? How would the US respond to that? Well, I think we all know the answer. They'll freak out, they'll lose their minds, and then eventually they'll use military force. I don't think and it would be a surprise to no one. So I think the lesson from this article is it's okay when we do it. Like I said, it's a lot of double standards and a lot of deception. But anyway, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Take care.